the Diamond Sutra, Part 2. So in Part 2, we will be reading together and analyzing Chapter 9 to Chapter 16, which will basically round off the entire Part 1 of the Diamond Sutra. The following 16 chapters of the Diamond Sutra will be essentially a reiteration of the first 16 chapters, but with many different emphases and examples, just to consolidate the idea of emptiness and the idea of how to practice the Diamond Sutra. Let's get started. Chapter 9 is the 4 stages of an Arhat. So before we talk about what the 4 stages are, we should first identify what an Arhat is. So if we were to talk about in Buddhist philosophy, there are the 10 realms. The 6 lower realms are the suffering realms, the realms of rebirth, of birth and death. And then the 4 realms beyond are the transcendental realms, the realms beyond birth and death. So that's where we have liberation. That's where we're liberated and we have full control of our force, our life force. The bottom realms are where we are under the control of our life force, of our karma. So of the 6 realms, of the 6 lower realms, the lower 3 realms are Hell realm, Ghost realm, and Animal realm. And then the upper 3 realms of the 6 realms are Human realm, Asura realm, and Heavenly realm, Heavenly beings realm. And so we're in the 4th realm from the bottom, where we experience a combination of joy and suffering. The lower 3 realms experience mainly suffering, and then Asuras and heavenly beings enjoy mainly pleasures and joy. And so we're stuck in the middle, which the Buddha has mentioned time and time again, that this is the most conducive realm for spiritual cultivation, because we are having a mixture of comfort and joy to help us have ease in practice, as well as a good dose of suffering and hardship and difficulty to motivate us to cultivate in the first place. And then the 4 realms on top, of the top 4 realms, we begin with Ahat, which is the emphasis of this chapter. Then there is Pratyeka Buddha, then there's the Bodhisattva, then there's the Buddha. And so the Arhat is a self-enlightened being. Pratyeka Buddha is also self-enlightenment. The difference being Arhat was enlightened based on the teachings of the Buddha, whereas the Pratyeka Buddha was enlightened by himself through understanding of cause and effect, causality, understanding that everything is transient, and through self-enlightenment, he had attained this level of Pratyeka Buddha. The upper 2 realms of the 10 realm is the Bodhisattva realm. The mind of a Bodhisattva is a Bodhi mind, meaning that they have an aspiration to lead all beings with them to the perfect enlightenment of the Buddha. And so the difference is Arhat and Pratyeka Buddha are happy to just be enlightened by themselves, whereas the Bodhisattva wants to lead everyone with them. So it's self-liberation as well as liberating others. Then the Buddha realm is the realm of perfection, where they have completed the Bodhisattva path and have already liberated all sentient beings. One would ask, what do you mean liberate all sentient beings? How can there be any Buddhas if the criteria is that all sentient beings must first be liberated, but then clearly there's not all sentient beings have been liberated, right? But this is all sentient beings within one's own mind. And so from the mind of the Buddha, he has liberated all his sentient beings within the scope of his mind. Within the scope of our individual minds, we still have sentient beings left to liberate, and so we haven't attained the state yet. And so within the state of the Arhatship, there are 4 stages that we'll get into here. But the Arhatship, the Pratyeka Buddhaship, the Arhatship, Pratyeka Buddha, and the Bodhisattva, these make up the 3 vehicles. And so the Buddha vehicle is the supreme vehicle. And so ultimately all the Buddha's teachings is fundamentally just one supreme vehicle that is categorized into the 3 vehicles. But all 3 vehicles ultimately lead to the ultimate vehicle, the supreme vehicle, being Buddhahood, which we will go into later in a later chapter. we talk about the supreme vehicle. So let's get into chapter 9. Sambuddhi, what do you think? Does a Sotapanna have the thought, I have attained the realization of a Sotapanna? Sambuddhi said, no, world honored one. Why not? Because Sotapanna means stream enterer, and there is in fact nothing to enter. One who does not enter into form, sound, smell, taste, touch, or dhammas is called a Sotapanna. So let's just give a preface of the 4 stages. The first stage is Sotapanna, the second stage is Sakridagaman, and then Anagaman, and then Ahat. After a lengthy period of cultivation, a person will first enter Sotapanna, which is stream enterer, which means that this person has 7 more lifetimes of practice before he attains the state of Arhatship, which means liberation. Then there is the Sakridagaman, which means that you have 1 more time. You will die and return 1 more time before you attain liberation. Number 3 is Anagaman, which means that it means non-returner, which means that when you die, you will just pass into another state where you will attain liberation there. So you don't return to the human realm. Arhatship means you have already transcended to the state of liberation in this life. And so here we're talking about the stream enterer. Does a Sotapanna have the thought in mind, I am a Sotapanna? The Buddha says no, because the definition of a Sotapanna means that his mind does not enter into concepts and into states of the 6 senses, and that is why he is a Sotapanna. So if a Sotapanna was to say, I am a Sotapanna, it means that he still has attachment to the self, to form, and to the dhammas. So that's a contradiction. Sambuddhi, what do you think? Does a Sakridagaman have the thought, I have attained the realization of a Sakridagaman? Sambuddhi said, no, world honored one. Why not? Although Sakridagaman means to go and come 1 more time, there is in reality no going and coming, therefore he is called a Sakridagaman. So this is only from the perspective of the discriminatory mind, like ours, that sees coming and going, that sees attainment and non-attainment. From the perspective of a Sakridagaman, because he has attained this realization that he is a Sakridagaman, because he has attained the state of Sakridagaman, it means that he has realized the state of detachment, the state of non-attachment, the state of non-attainment, and that is the state of Sakridagaman, which means the state of transcending form, transcending discrimination, that's transcending attachment. So if someone was to say, I have attained the realization of a Sakridagaman, by definition, it's a contradiction. It's not a term that you define for yourself. It's a term given to you from someone else. If you were to define anything from yourself, saying, I have attained anything, then it means that you still have attachment to the self, still have attachment to the 4 false notions of self, other, sentient being, and lifespan. Moving on, Sakridagaman, what do you think? Does an Anagaman have the thought, I have attained the realization of a Anagaman? The Buddha said, no, world honored one. Why not? Anagaman means non-returning to the human world, but there is in fact no such thing as non-returning. Therefore, he is called Anagaman. If we realize, which is the realization of an Anagaman, that there is in reality no dhamma to be attained, there is in reality nothing to be attained, that everything are just mere labels, to realize that is called to realize the state of Anagaman. So if someone says, I have realized the state of Anagaman, it means that he still attaches to the idea of Anagaman. Anagaman means non-returning, but there is in fact no such thing as non-returning. Just like there's no such thing as Sakridagaman or stream entering, there's no such thing as anything. If someone still has the notion of a dhamma, still has notion of attachment to any states and any realms, they are not considered a Anagaman. In fact, not considered a Sakridagaman or a Sotapanna. And so that's why someone who has attained the state of Anagaman does not see the concept of Anagaman, does not see the concept of non-returning, does not see the concept of form. He has transcended these concepts, which is why he is called an Anagaman. If he has the thought, I have attained the realization of Anagaman, he's attaching to attainment, attaching to realization, attaching to the ego and attaching to the Anagaman term. But that's a contradiction. So an anagamman would not say, I have attained the realization of anagamman. It's a contradiction. Subbuddhi, what do you think? Does an Arhat have the thought, I have attained the realization of an Arhat? Subbuddhi said, no, World Honored One. Why not? There is in reality no such a thing called Arhat. World Honored One, if an Arhat should give rise to the thought, I have attained the realization of an Arhat, this means he is attached to the notions of a self, a person, a sentient being, or a lifespan. So this is just to consolidate the idea that if someone says that he has attained these things, it's a contradiction, because the attainment of Arhatship means you transcend attachment to false notions, attachment to any notion, such as a self, a person, sentient being, or lifespan. So an Arhat, in fact, will not have the thought in mind, I have attained the realization of an Arhat. But the Buddha basically reaffirms the same thing 4 times. On each level of an Arhat, he reaffirms that an Arhat, or a person practicing to be an Arhat, practicing to be liberated, is being liberated from the notions of these concepts, the notions of self, the notions of labels, the notions of having attachment or attainment to anything. To be detached from all notions, detached from all concepts, is the attainment of Arhatship. Lord Honored One, you have said that of all people, I am the foremost in attaining the samadhi of non-contention, and the foremost Arhat in being free from desires. But I do not have the thought that I am an Arhat who is free from desires. World Honored One, if I give rise to the thought that I have attained Arhatship, then you will not have said that Subbuddhi practices Ariana, abiding peacefully in non-contention. In reality, Subbuddhi abides in nothing at all. Therefore, Subbuddhi is called one who abides peacefully in non-contention. So now he's giving himself as an example. Subbuddhi is being very wise. He's saying that the Buddha refers to me as an Arhat because I am free from desires, and I have attained the samadhi, the meditational state of non-contention. And that is why, because I have attained these states, that the Buddha says I have attained these states. But from my perspective, I have not attained anything. He says here that in reality, Subbuddhi abides in nothing at all, and that is why the Buddha refers to me as an Arhat, free from desires. I would not say that by myself, because it wouldn't make sense. And so non-contention is very important here, because to be in contention means that you are holding a view. You're saying, no, this is right, or this is wrong, or this is good, or this is bad, or this is anything. To be in contention means that you are holding a specific view, and that you are arguing the other person's view. To be in contention means that you are still attached. To be in non-contention means that you are not holding any views, and so there is no need to contend with anyone, no need to argue and to compete with anyone, because you're not holding a view. And so this is very, very key in the practice of Arhatship, the practice of liberation. Chapter 10, Transformation to a Buddha World. The Buddha said to Subbuddhi, what do you think? When the Tathagata studied under Dipankara Buddha, did he receive any Dhamma? No, World Honored One, when the Tathagata studied under Dipankara Buddha, he did not receive any Dhamma. Subbuddhi, what do you think? Does a Bodhisattva transform a world into a Buddha world? No, he does not, World Honored One. Why not? One who transforms the world does not transform the world. That is to transform the world. The first paragraph of this chapter is very, very important already. Dipankara Buddha is the previous Buddha, and at the time, Sakyamuni Buddha was still a novice monk. And when he met Dipankara Buddha in a previous lifetime, Dipankara Buddha saw the sincerity of his cultivation and gave him a prediction saying, in a future lifetime, novice monk, you will be a Buddha called Sakyamuni. And so that is the attainment of a prediction, which is very, very remarkable. But now the Buddha said, did I attain anything? Did I attain any Dhamma from the Dipankara Buddha? To which Subbuddhi says, no, you did not attain anything. There is nothing to be attained. And that is why this realization granted you the prediction. If you were to say, I will be a Buddha in the future lifetime, having that notion of attainment, the notion of I, the notion of a state of Buddhahood, if you were still attached to these forms and dharmas, then the Dipankara Buddha at the time would not have given the prediction to the Buddha. Only because the Buddha was free from such labels and states and concepts was Dipankara able to give him the prediction. And so then he goes on to the second example. Does a bodhisattva transform a world into a Buddha world? A bodhisattva adorns the Buddha land with his cultivation, with his merits and blessings, with his practices. He adorns his Buddha land. So the Buddha land of Sakyamuni Buddha is the Saha world, which is this world that we're in. And so the Buddha adorned it himself with all his practices and merits and virtues. He makes the Saha world into a pure land. Amitabha Buddha made the Western pure land of ultimate bliss into his pure land. And so every single bodhisattva is cultivating their own pure land. So the Buddha is asking, does a bodhisattva transform a world into a pure land? To which the Buddha says, no. One who transforms the world does not transform the world. And that is to transform the world. So if someone says that I'm transforming the world, then they are still attached to dualistic concepts, to defiled concepts. And so that is not called transforming the world. That is called defiling the world. For one who does not have such a notion that they are transforming the world, that is how you transform the world and purify the world. What are you purifying? You're purifying defiled notions of duality, of good and bad, right and wrong. And you're purifying those false notions. And that is called transforming the world. But if you are having the thought that I'm transforming the world, then you are not transforming the world. You're only polluting the world with defiled dualistic notions. So this is the teaching of emptiness. Basically, the Buddha is saying that there is no such thing as the state of Buddhahood. There is no such thing as the state of Arhatship. There is no such thing as adorning the Buddha world. These are all just labels that if you attach to, then you're being counterproductive. And so, Sabuddhi, Bodhisattvas and Mahasattvas should give rise to a pure mind that is not attached to form, sound, smell, taste, touch, or dhammas. The mind should act without any attachments. Sabuddhi, if there were a person with a body the size of Mount Sumeru, what do you think? Would this body be huge? Extremely huge, world honored one. Why? The Buddha teaches us that a body is not a body, hence it is called a body, which is to say it is only body by name and label, but in reality, there is no such thing as a body. It's only a body in name and form. And so now, Sabuddhi is being asked by the Buddha, or he's being told by the Buddha, that is to say that any bodhisattva or cultivator should give rise to a pure mind. What is a pure mind? Is one that is not attached to the six senses. If your mind does not abide anywhere, that is the pure practice. In chapter 11, we talk about the merits of this sutra. Sabuddhi, what do you think? If there were as many Ganges rivers as sand grains in the Ganges, wouldn't the amount of sand contained in all of the Ganges rivers be great? Sabuddhi said, extremely great, world honored one. If even the number of the Ganges rivers is innumerable, how much more so the sand grains within? Sabuddhi, now I tell you truthfully, if a good man or woman fills as many chikliocosms as the sand grains in all of those Ganges rivers with the 7 jewels and gives them away in charity, wouldn't this merit be great? Extremely great, world honored one. The Buddha said to Sabuddhi, if a good man or woman is able to comprehend and follow a 4-line verse of this sutra and teach it to others, their merit will be far greater. So this is using the analogy of Ganges River to highlight the value of merit that a person attains from reciting just a 4-line verse from the Diamond Sutra. And so the analogy is the Ganges River having all the sand particles. If all of those sand particles were then turned into another Ganges River, then all of the sand grains within all of those Ganges River would be immeasurable. And so then all of those sand grains in all of those Ganges rivers were to be a world system, a universe, a cosmic universe. And you filled all of that space with the 7 jewels. If you were to give that away in charity, your merit would be remarkable, immeasurable. But if a person was able to recite just a 4-line verse from this sutra, then his merit will be far greater. Why? It's because the merit from wisdom transcends the merit from material form. You have material form, which is immeasurable, which is blessing. But the merit attained from wisdom is far greater, is far more useful, and it leads to liberation of the mind. Chapter 12, the most extraordinary merit. Furthermore, Sambuddhi, wherever one teaches or recites so much as a 4-line verse of this sutra, that place should be venerated as a Buddha shrine by heavenly beings, human beings, and asuras in this world. And this makes up the 3 upper realms of the 6th cyclical realm. How much more so is the case where one can completely remember, comprehend, and follow this sutra? Sambuddhi, you should know that such a person has achieved the highest, rarest of accomplishments. Wherever this sutra is present, it is as if the Buddha and the Buddha's revered disciples were also present. So here he's saying that wherever this sutra is expounded, right then and there, that is a place where all the heavenly beings should be paying homage. That is a place of respect. That is a place of sacredness. So much so that it is as if the Buddha and all of his disciples were also present in that exact location. Why? Because the wisdom of the Buddha, the wisdom of all the enlightened beings, can be found within this sutra. Chapter 13, naming of the sutra. Then Sambuddhi addressed the Buddha, World-honored one, what should we call this sutra, and how should we uphold it? The Buddha said to Sambuddhi, this sutra is called the Diamond of Perfect Wisdom. You should revere this title and practice the sutra accordingly. Why? Sambuddhi, the Buddha teaches that prajna paramita is not prajna paramita. Therefore, it is called prajna paramita. Sambuddhi, what do you think? Does the Tathagata have any dhamma to teach? Sambuddhi said to the Buddha, World-honored one, the Tathagata has nothing to teach. Sambuddhi, what do you think? Are all the tiny particles contained in the trichliocosm great in number? Sambuddhi said, extremely great, world-honored one. Sambuddhi, the Tathagata teaches that tiny particles are not tiny particles, therefore they are called tiny particles. The Tathagata teaches that worlds are not worlds, therefore they are called worlds. Sambuddhi, what do you think? Can the Tathagata be recognized by means of his 32 physical characteristics? No, he cannot, world-honored one. One cannot recognize the Tathagata by means of his 32 physical characteristics. Why not? Because the Tathagata teaches that the 32 physical characteristics are in fact not real attributes. Therefore, they are called the 32 physical attributes. Sambuddhi, if a good man or good woman dedicates lifetimes as numerous as the grains of sands in the Ganges River as charitable acts, and another comprehends and follows even a 4-line verse of this sutra and taught it to others, the merits gained by the latter would far exceed that of the former. So this is a very profound chapter. Basically, every single chapter is very profound, and the meaning within each chapter is enough to cultivate to perfection and attain the level of the Buddha, which is why the Buddha highly regards this sutra and the teachings of emptiness from within this sutra. Every single paragraph and chapter is highlighting the teaching of emptiness, which is the teaching of the Buddha wisdom. So here he's saying that the perfection of wisdom, which is to say prajna paramita, should be the name of this sutra, because it is through this sutra that we can attain the perfection of wisdom. And the perfection of wisdom is the ultimate ingredient we need to attain total complete liberation. Anutra Samyaksambudi. Here the Buddha is wanting us to see the emptiness of the teachings of the Dhamma, saying, what do you think? Does the Tathagata have any Dhamma to teach? And Sambuddhi responds saying, the Tathagata has nothing to teach. And that is the teaching of emptiness. And so in this entire sutra, the Buddha wants us to detach from everything that we attach to, but not just worldly dharmas, of course. Detaching from the states of Buddhahood, detachment from ourself, detachment from the teachings, detachment from the Buddha lands, detachment from merits and blessings. By detaching from everything Of course, the unwholesome things and the non-dharma we have to detach. But here he's highlighting even the attachment to the wholesome dharmas, to the enlightened states, to the merits and virtues, and to the Buddha Dharma we should also detach. Which is to say that the Buddha has nothing to teach. Teaching of the Dharma is only just by name and label, but in fact, in substance, there is no such teaching as Dharma. And then he goes further to explain that worlds, the universe and all of its tiny particles, there is no such thing beyond just names and labels. That in reality, even the universe with all of its worlds are empty in nature. And then he goes on to say that the merits that someone has from reciting even a 4-line verse from this sutra will transcend that of someone who has dedicated lifetimes as numerous as all the sands in the Ganges River to charitable acts. He also talks about the emptiness of the 32 physical attributes of a Buddha, saying that if you want to recognize the Buddha, you do not recognize the Buddha by his physical attributes. Those physical attributes are empty in nature. And if you want to seek Buddhahood, you cannot seek Buddha. You cannot seek enlightenment and liberation and nirvana within mere physical attributes. Chapter 14, a mind without attachments. Upon hearing this sermon, Subhuti was moved to tears. Having deeply understood its meaning and significance, he said to the Buddha, "How remarkable, world-honored one! You have taught us such a profound sutra. Even though I have long attained the wisdom I have never heard such a teaching before. World-honored one, if someone who hears this sutra gives rise to pure faith and thus perceives the true nature of reality, we should know that this person has achieved the most extraordinary virtue. World-honored one, the true nature of reality is empty. This is what the Tathagata calls the true nature of reality." Subhuti is one of the great disciples which mastered the teachings of emptiness. So he attained the wisdom eye. So he attained the wisdom eye, which is the eye of emptiness, the eye of purity, that you can see reality as it is. And what he's saying is that if someone is able to inspire pure faith in this sutra upon hearing it, then it means that such a person is able to penetrate the fundamental nature of reality, which is empty. And so the true nature of reality is emptiness. And to see that is to attain the most extraordinary virtue. Further consolidating the teaching of emptiness within this Diamond Sutra. Continuing on, world-honored one, having just heard this sutra, I have no difficulty in believing, comprehending, and following it. But in the ages to come, in the last 500 years, if there are sentient beings who hear this sutra, believe, comprehend, and follow it, they will be most remarkable beings. Why? These beings do not abide in the notions of a self, a person, a sentient being, or a lifespan. Why? Because a self is not a self. The appearances of a person, a sentient being, and a lifespan are likewise illusory. Why? Those who relinquish all appearances and notions are called Buddhas. So here he's saying that he has no difficulty in believing and understanding the teachings within this sutra. But he's saying that if people within the last 500 years, which is the age of the declining Dharma, which is this age, 2,000 years after the passing of the Buddha, if people within this age is able to comprehend such a teaching of emptiness, it is the most remarkable, because it's much more difficult for people in this time to have faith in the Dharma than it is for the people in the time of the Buddha to attain this teaching. Because at the time of the Buddha, the true teachings were much more prominent. In this day and age, the false teachings and the false views and the false truths are much more popular than the true teachings, such as the teachings of the Buddha. And so he further on says that if someone is able to inspire true faith in this teaching, it is because he has not attached to the self, a person, sentient being, and lifespan, by seeing that they are illusory. And to be able to relinquish all these appearances and notions, that is to attain the state of Buddhahood. The Buddha said to Subhuti, "So it is, so it is." You should know that if someone who hears the teaching of this sutra is neither shocked, frightened, nor disturbed, this person is extremely rare. And why? Subhuti, the Tathagata says that the foremost paramita is not the foremost paramita. Therefore, it is called the foremost paramita. Subhuti, the Tathagata teaches that tolerance paramita is not tolerance paramita. Therefore, it is called tolerance paramita. Why? Subhuti, in a former lifetime, my body was mutilated by King Kalinga. At the time, I had no notions of a self, a person, a sentient being, or a lifespan. Why not? If I had held to the notions of a self, a person, a sentient being, or a lifespan, when my body was dismembered limb after limb, I would have given rise to feelings of resentment and hatred. The Buddha is in complete agreement with Subhuti, saying that if someone is able to hear this teaching within the sutra and not give rise to fear, disturbance, or shock, this is an extremely rare person, because the teachings within this sutra is extremely profound and difficult to understand. Saying that everything is empty is not an easy teaching to fathom. And then he further talks about the foremost paramita. In this case, he's using the teachings of tolerance, the paramita of tolerance. So just to give a reminder, there are 6 paramitas that we have to cultivate to attain the state of Buddhahood. The 6 being morality, generosity, which is charity that was expounded in the previous chapter, which is generosity, giving, charity. Number 3 is diligence. Number 4 is forbearance, which is tolerance, which is patience. In this context, tolerance. Then the following 2 are concentration, which is meditative concentration, and then wisdom, prajna, which is the whole basis of this teaching. The Diamond Sutra preaches the wisdom of perfection, the wisdom of Buddhism, the wisdom of emptiness. And so here he's using the teachings of tolerance to give an example, explaining why it is so important to cultivate tolerance in the understanding of emptiness. Because tolerance helps us transcend the 4 false notions of self, being, sentient being, and lifespan. And then he gives an example of a previous lifetime when he was a cultivator and he was mutilated by King Kalinga. At the time, he was a cultivator who had already transcended the false notions of self, but he hadn't transcended to the ultimate state, so he was still cultivating. At the time, the King Kalinga had many women with him, and he was just enjoying the pleasures as a king would. By the way, this story was expounded and explained by the sutra in a previous. By the way, this story of King Kalinga was taught in a previous sutra that the Buddha expounded at a previous time. But I have read that sutra, which is why I know this mini story and the story that he's referencing. And so what the story was within that sutra was that the King Kalinga was just in the forests one day. He was taking a nap, and so all the women that he was with was walking around, and they came across the Buddha of a previous life. He was just a cultivator. The Buddha was just meditating under a tree, and so all the women saw how sincere his practice was, and so they went to pay him respect. When they were bowing to him, they were making him offerings. The king woke up and he became very jealous, saying, "What is this false cultivator stealing all my women?" And so with that gave rise to anger and hatred and jealousy. He was questioning the Buddha, saying, "Why are you taking all my women? You are not real, you are false. You are a false cultivator. You still have full of desires." To which the Buddha at the time responded, "I do not give rise to anger. I do not give rise to jealousy or desire." So then the king said, "If that is correct, then I will cut off your limb." He cuts off an arm. At the time, the cultivator did not give rise to any ill will. So then the king cut off the leg, and then the other arm, and then the other leg, limb by limb. But the cultivator at the time did not give rise to even an ounce of anger, of hatred, of ill will. At that time, the king was so touched by the sincerity of the practice that he knelt to his knees and then gave rise to the mind of practice. And from there, the king himself became a cultivator. And so the Buddha at the time was able to inspire the king to practice with his cultivation of forbearance, the forbearance paramita. Subhuti, I also recall that for 500 lifetimes I was a rishi of tolerance. At the time, I was also free from the notions of a self, a person, a sentient being, or a lifespan. Therefore, Subhuti, bodhisattvas should relinquish all appearances and notions in their resolve to attain unsurpassed, complete enlightenment. They should not give rise to any thought attached to form, sound, smell, taste, touch, or dhamma. They should give rise to a mind without any attachments. Any attachment of the mind is errant. Therefore, the Buddha says that a bodhisattva should practice charity with a mind unattached to form. Subhuti, to benefit all sentient beings, a bodhisattva should practice charity in this way. The Tathagata teaches that all appearances and notions are not appearances and notions, and that all sentient beings are not sentient beings. Subhuti, what the Tathagata speaks is true, real, and as it is. His words are neither deceptive nor contradictory. Subhuti, the truth that the Tathagata has attained is neither real nor unreal. Subhuti, if a bodhisattva practices charity without attachment, Subhuti, if a bodhisattva practices charity with attachment, he is like a person in the dark who cannot see anything. If a bodhisattva practices charity without any attachment, he is like a person under the bright sun, with eyes open, seeing all things clearly. Subhuti, if in a future time there are good men and women who are able to recite, remember, comprehend, and follow this sutra, the Tathagata, with his Buddha wisdom, will clearly perceive and recognize each one of them as they all achieve immeasurable, infinite virtues. So in this paragraph, the Buddha further emphasizes the importance of not attaching to any dhammas, or to any senses, to abide with a mind of non-attachment. And that if a person has a mind attached to form, then that is a mind of errant. And so the Buddha says that a bodhisattva should practice charity, which is one of the paramitas, with a mind that is unattached to form, unattached to anything. And this is the best way for a bodhisattva to practice in order to benefit all sentient beings. But so that we don't attach to the practice, so that we don't attach to the notion of sentient beings and the notion of appearances and notions, the Tathagata then teaches us that notions and appearances and sentient beings are not. They are merely just names and labels. And then the Buddha goes on to say that if anyone is practicing the teachings within the Diamond Sutra, the Buddha will see that such people will have achieved immeasurable and infinite virtues. That is to say that the merits within the sutra is immeasurable. Chapter 15, the sutra is a supreme vehicle. Subhuti, if a good man or good woman renounces their life for charity in the morning as many times as there are grains of sand in the Ganges, and does likewise at noon and in the evening, continuing thus for immeasurable hundreds of thousands of millions of kalpas. And if someone else hears this teaching and gives rise to unwavering faith, the merit of the latter would far exceed that of the former. How much more the merit of those who transcribe, recite, remember, follow, and explain the sutra to others. So now he's also urging us to not only practice the sutra, but also explain the sutra to others. And he likens it to someone who renounces their life for charity. So that is to say, someone who practices charity with their entire life for 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, and evening, and he does this for immeasurable hundreds of thousands of millions of kalpas. Someone that does this would, of course, cultivate so much merit, but someone who is able to recite it for themselves and then to explain it to others will have far greater merit. In summary, Subhuti, this sutra carries inconceivable, immeasurable, limitless virtue, and the Tathagata teaches it for the benefit of the aspirants of the great vehicle and the aspirants of this supreme vehicle. The Tathagata will know and see those who are able to recite, remember, follow, and widely teach this sutra to others as achieving innumerable, immeasurable, limitless, and inconceivable virtues. They carry on the work of the Tathagata in bringing beings to unsurpassed complete enlightenment. Why? Subhuti, those who are content with inferior teachings are attached to the views of a self, a person, a sentient being, and a lifespan. Such people are not able to hear, recite, remember, and explain the sutra to others. Subhuti, wherever this sutra is present, all the heavenly and human beings and asuras in all the worlds should come and make offerings. You should know that its presence is equivalent to a pagoda that all should venerate and pay homage to by circumambulating or scattering flowers and incense on its ground. So here the Buddha explains that this sutra and the merits it carries is for the aspirants of the greater vehicle and the supreme vehicle, and not for the inferior vehicle, the lesser vehicle. So remember when I mentioned the Arhats and the Pratyeka Buddhas, for self-enlightenment, they practice the inferior teaching. They practice the lesser vehicle. Then there's the Bodhisattva, which is the greater vehicle. And then the Buddha vehicle is the supreme vehicle. And so this teaching is only for the Bodhisattvas and for those that want to be the Buddha. Because these vehicles are the vehicles where the person wants to lead all sentient beings with them to perfect enlightenment. Whereas the people that want to cultivate the lower vehicles of Arhatship and Pratyeka Buddha are unable to fathom the importance and the merit of liberating other people because they are still attached to the false notions of self, person, sentient being, and lifespan. And then the Buddha goes on to explain that wherever this sutra is present, all the heavenly beings and human beings and asuras should come and make offering as if there is a pagoda in its very place. Chapter 16, the purgation of bad karma. Furthermore, Subhuti, if there are good men or women who recite, remember, comprehend, and follow this sutra, but are belittled by others, it is because of their previous evil karma, which would cause them to be reborn in a wretched destiny. But now, by enduring the disparagement of others, this previous bad karma is eradicated, and they will eventually attain unsurpassed complete enlightenment. Subhuti, I remember that countless kalpas ago, before the time of Dipankara Buddha, I have encountered 84,000 billion nayutas of Buddhas, made offerings to, and served all of them without fail. However, if someone in the Dhamma ending age can recite, remember, comprehend, and follow this sutra, this person's virtue will be 100 times, even 100 trillion times greater than mine when I made offering to all of those Buddhas. In fact, no such comparison, either by calculation or analogy, is possible. Subhuti, if I fully reveal the virtue attained by good men or women in the Dhamma ending age who recite, remember, comprehend, and follow this sutra, some people upon hearing it would become suspicious, skeptical, even bewildered. Subhuti, you should know that the underlying meaning of this sutra is inconceivable, and its rewards are also inconceivable. And so first of all, he's talking about the evil karma that a person would have from previous lifetimes, and those evil karmas would be leading one to wretched destinies, the wretched destinies being hell, the ghost realm, and the animal realm. But if a person is cultivating the Diamond Sutra and the teachings of emptiness, the teachings of the Bodhisattva, if such a person is being disparaged and insulted and offended by other people, then all those bad karma that he has accumulated from previous lifetimes will immediately be evaporated and eradicated, so that in the future lifetimes they won't have to experience the negative destinies anymore. And then he goes on to say that when Sakyamuni Buddha was still a practicing monk and he was serving all these billions and trillions of nayutas of Buddhas in the past and serving them and making offerings to them, if comparing the merits of that offering and service, as someone was able to recite and remember and practice the Diamond Sutra within the Dharma ending age, which is this current age right now, the merits of such a person will transcend that of the Buddha at the time making all these offerings, to the point that it is not possible to give a comparison in calculation or analogy. To the point that if the Buddha was to try and give a comparison, such people would become suspicious, skeptical, or even bewildered. And that is to say that the merits within this sutra is inconceivable. and that the meaning within this sutra is equally inconceivable. Thanks for watching part 2 of the Diamond Sutra. I'll see you in the next video.